Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Dubsy here. Today I am reviewing Demon Slayer Infinity Castle now that it officially came to Crunchyroll. I watched this film in theaters when it came out last year, and it just finally came to Crunchyroll after what felt like way too long. So, yeah, Infinity Castle picks up right after the events of the Hashira training arc. Muzan is getting confronted by the Demon Slayer Corps, and he essentially sends them plunging into the Infinity Castle, this shifting fortress that is controlled by Muzan. They all end up getting split up and divided, and essentially are separated into fighting their own battles. The Hashira and Tanjiro are all facing against upper rank demons, and they're fighting powerful enemies that are pushing them to their absolute limits. The movie focuses heavily on major confrontations, which reveal a lot of the demon's past, while showing how dangerous Muzan's fleet is. The movie mainly focuses on three major fights: Shinobu fighting Doma, Zenitsu fighting Kaigaku, and Tanjiro and Giyu fighting Akaza. I'm going to begin with the Shinobu versus Doma fight. This fight is very emotional. It's a very dark fight. Shinobu is confronting up rank 2 Doma, which is the demon that is responsible for killing her sister, Kane. But knowing this, we all knew as watching this, and Shinobu knew herself, she isn't physically strong enough to decapitate Doma. So she has to find different ways to fight him. And for the majority of this battle, she was trying to find that way, and she was getting hurt all along the way. And the battle essentially ended with her being consumed by Doma. But Shinobu spent months preparing her body with enough poison of wisteria poison to try and defeat Doma. So she essentially turned herself into a weapon. This was very sad and very hard to watch. So the Shinobu versus Doma fight is for me the darkest fight of this film. Doma then absorbs Shinobu, and he thinks that he basically won. And this fight essentially ends with Kanao being joined by Inosuke to set up the second film, and that is where the resolution of this fight, I think, will be. So we see Shinobu die. She turns herself into a weapon to hopefully kill Doma. That for me is what makes her death really brutal and sad, is that this movie ends without the resolution of this fight. So we really don't know if her sacrifice is even enough. Now I would like to go into my personal favorite fight of this movie, being Zenitsu versus Kaigaku. Kaigaku was Zenitsu's senior under their Hashira master Jigoro. Kaigaku is a polar opposite of Zenitsu. He's very arrogant and obsessed with power. He then becomes a demon and takes upper rank 6. Zenitsu finds him in the Infinity Castle, and this isn't really just a regular demon fight, it was personal. Kaigaku is believing that Zenitsu is weak and mocks him for being cowardly, but Zenitsu thinks he has developed and changed so much as a person, but Zenitsu is not that same person. He is struggling for the majority of this fight because Kaigaku knows all of his forms and all of his movesets, as they were both trained under the same Hashira master. Zenitsu reveals a seventh form of thunder breathing, which he developed himself, and he uses it to speed blitz Kaigaku and decapitate him, which for me, this was the best moment of this film. And really, just the choreography of this fight was really exceptional. I mean, throughout this whole film, all these fights are choreographed incredibly, and the animation is incredible. Now for the main fight of the movie, Tanjiro and Giyu fighting Akaza. This fight is very spectacular as we see Akaza return and Tanjiro gets another chance to fight him after the events of the Mugen Train movie, and Akaza killing Rengoku, a really beloved character, so the stakes are incredibly high. But Tanjiro isn't alone, he's with Giyu. This fight was a just long battle of technique, endurance, and determination. Tanjiro enters the transparent world and understands Akaza's fighting style. They think that they defeated him, but he comes back. We get Akaza's full backstory, and it's honestly incredibly tragic. Akaza, originally being named Hakuji, was in the Edo slums and he was stealing medicine for his sick father, who eventually gave up his own life. He found a new family with a dojo master and his daughter, Koyuki. He fell in love and was planning to marry her, and a rival dojo poisoned and killed both of them. Hakuji then went on to kill all of them, which then Muzan found him and wiped his memory and turned him into a demon. This backstory is incredibly tragic. I would argue it is probably one of the most tragic throughout this entire show. Honestly, Akaza's backstory is not too far off from Tanjiro's. This fight climaxes, and rather than coexist as a demon, Akaza ultimately chooses to let himself die. This fight was incredibly emotional and impactful. I remember watching it in theaters and just sitting in shambles. I think just talking about the overall big battles in this movie, I think the Tanjiro and Giyu versus Akaza fight is probably the biggest and most impactful. I really like the Zenitsu versus Kaigaku sequence. That's my favorite fight. The Shinobu versus Doma fight is incredibly emotional and tragic. All of these fights and scenes throughout Infinity Castle Part 1 were incredible, and they were animated incredibly, and I honestly think that the complaints of this film being too long is not correct. Sure, maybe they could have cut small scenes here and there, but I think the scenes were all cultivated to show the bigger picture of this movie and how high the stakes are and get a lay of the land of the Infinity Castle. Infinity Castle Part 2 is probably going to be bigger and better than this film, or at least I hope. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to Infinity Castle Part 2. I don't think there's any news of when it's going to come out at this time. Demon Slayer Infinity Castle IMDb'd at a rating of 8.4 out of 10. I think that is slightly low. I honestly think that Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, for me, it's probably a 9.4 out of 10. I think this film is pretty exceptional. It is probably the best anime movie that I have watched. I really do think the Chainsaw Man Reze Arc film is great. I would take Demon Slayer over it. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to Infinity Castle Part 2. Thank you guys for watching this video, and let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Anyways, it's been Dubsy. Peace.